I'm Rob Lucuria at Awards Heaven. Rachel, I really enjoyed this film. It's got this propulsive, high gloss energy on the surface, but there's something sharper underneath about power, perception, and what it takes to survive in that kind of environment. So I'm really excited to get into it with you today, Rachel. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm psyched to be here with you again.
So, the opening really sets the tone. The drone shot dropping into that saturated, chaotic night world, following Whitney with that gold wrap needle drop. It feels very intentional, very myth making. What were you trying to establish in that first sequence, both about her and about why we're so drawn to these larger than life entrepreneurs?
Yeah, thank you. I feel like you sort of hit the nail on the head with your opening about your intro because the word propulsive was like a key central theme for us throughout the whole film. And the way that I talked about it with Lily and with our department heads was really, that Whitney is a force. And so from the beginning of the film, she is pushing it forward. She's making things happen. She's making moves. She's using her ingenuity and using her tenacity to sort of to control the narrative and get what she wants and move to the next step. And then at a certain point in the film, it sort of turns on it and she starts getting pulled sort of against her will through the process. And so it's like whether it's she's the initiator of it or it's happening to her, there is this sort of innate propulsion. And so that's exactly the energy that we wanted at the beginning. Was I wanted to understand this woman is a force to be reckoned with. We see her sneaking into this party, we see her working the party, trying to figure out how to make the next thing happen. And really there's an energy and a brilliance and a bit of naivete to her at the beginning that we're trying to capture with that party.
Yeah, I think she lets us in. In fact, let's do a bit of a deep dive in Lily James because she is phenomenal. She carries so much of the film. Without her, perhaps maybe the film doesn't work as well. Who knows? She's the lens we experience everything through. What were the early conversations like with her about balancing her charisma, but also with her vulnerability?
Yeah, I mean, it was a gift to have Lily on the film because she's just hyper dedicated. We're both sort of like obsessive, creative people. And so to really get to go deep on every single decision and, I feel like our collaboration was really me coming in with here's this part of the story that we're telling and how do we craft that. And then on her end she did a ton of research. She listened to every studied, every interview that she could find with Whitney. She went and uh like studied under a founder or two in Silicon Valley. She really like put the time in to bring as much authenticity to it. So I feel like it was sort of me offering the roadmap and then her bringing as deep of an understanding of this character as she could to it.
Yeah, understood. So I want to talk about three particular choices that you made as the Helmer on this. Kind of similar. I like the way you sometimes like to capture certain scenes or maybe give us some exposition in a really interesting, innovative way. You did the same thing for Unpregnant. And so, like, for example, I love those direct to camera interviews with the dating app founders because it's cut like a speed dating session. It's clever tonally, and it turns what could have been a very functional, expositional kind of sequence into something really playful and on brand. So, how conscious were you of using that technique to keep viewers engaged while also covering quite a lot of narrative ground?
Again, just a perceptive watcher, Rob, because that's the trick. When you're trying to tell a real person's story and you're trying to capture so much of what happened and in an hour and a half and make it clear and make it entertaining, you finding these devices that sort of feel inherent to the story and natural to the story and provide the energy, like I was saying, that Whitney is sort of the force pushing all of this forward. And so that felt like a really, a really efficient way to have her control the narrative, her pushing it forward. And at this point in the story, she's still having a pretty good experience. It's exciting, it's an adventure. And so getting to go on all these dates and even have this hookup and, those moments are meant to be sort of the fun part of the journey before it starts to take a turn.
Yeah, and I'm going along for the ride. I think this is great. She's having the best time. There's nothing to see here. Of course, things do get quite ugly as this film progresses.
Yeah.
There's a moment where I actually laughed out loud, and there's a few times, but this one was quite a good belly laugh. So thank you. And that was the swipe scene, where she's they're trying to work out whether this thing's going to work, especially the frustration of the update. Delaying
Hmm.
before the reveal.
Yeah.
That's very funny. That's very funny. But it also says something about how scrappy and imperfect those moments are. And I felt that was actually quite relatable. How important was it for you to show that side of innovation rather than presenting it as a clean genius breakthrough?
Wha- Part of what drew me to this story beyond Whitney's experience being so extraordinary and sort of her ability to take her, the worst trauma of her life and forge it into this success. Part of what drew me to it is how much I related to a lot of it, both being a woman in a male dominated field and then also many of my early jobs at these male dominated companies were more upstart vibes. They were like scrappy B movie companies and like tech like Funny or Die websites. And so having that experience of being on the ground and feeling like you're in your early 20s, you're 23, you're 24, you're 25, and you're changing the game and stuff's happening and you feel like you're at the center of it. I feel like I had a taste of that kind of stumbling through and feeling like you were stumbling upon something that worked and having it feel exciting. I had a taste of that. And so getting to do that on as large a scale as how game changing Tinder was at the time felt yeah, made a lot of sense to me and was like part of what I was excited was to bring sort of the authenticity of, a bunch of people who hope something will work, want it to work, but you have no idea if it's going to be the biggest thing of all time.
Yeah, of course. I tell you what, though, the scene that I to me was my favorite scene of the whole film, and it was the you might hear this often, but it's the million users moment. That really hit for me because you deploy this old school flip display as the device, and it taps into something pure about ambition and shared achievement that many of us have felt, like the team finally touching the thing they've been chasing for so long. How important was it, though, to anchor the film with that kind of earned high before everything starts to really fracture?
But all your questions are coming from exactly perceiving all of my
Yeah.
intentions. So nice. I feel very seen. Thank you.
Good, good.
Um, but yeah, that's exactly it. Because we do know that a lot of dark things happened and things got very complicated, but it was really important to me to show what this success feels like and that there's nothing wrong with ambition and that like pushing and being excited and accomplishing something is is can be its own reward and is enough to make it really hard for her to leave. It's not obvious, oh, someone's, mistreating you. You got to get out of there. It's like to really have the audience feel how much ownership this group of people feel over this thing and how they all achieve something together and sort of creating, the thing with the number board and the sprinklers was a cinematic invention. That specific device was for us to try to create the feeling of how big it must have felt to be on the precipice of this thing and succeeding and something that had a 1 in a million chance all of a sudden having breaking through and having a million users is like, should be the pinnacle of sort of the good that she feels there before, the bad starts to outweigh it properly.
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, there's a clear tonal pivot once Whitney's position at Tinder starts to unravel. The palette, though, of the film, in my opinion, it really starts to cool. I could be wrong. The energy shifts. So I'm curious to hear what you have to say about. Can you walk me through that how you deliberately mapped the visual and emotional transition now that her story is starting to unravel as well?
Yeah, there's a huge focus on trying to make the viewer feel Whitney's experience through the film. So from the beginning, you're right, there's more color, there's more of a positive energy, there's more music, and there's more levity and, some proper like hard jokes, just to try to capture that excitement of the build so that then you have all of these tools to pull back on and pull away when it starts to darken. So you can really feel how horrible and traumatic it was for her to start to at first questioning how bad things were getting and then realizing they really were getting as bad as she feared. And so working with every department from from costumes to production designer to cinematographer to have everyone working in concert to really, you know, uh, be able to use all the levers of the cinematic language to try to sort of bring Whitney's experience to the forefront.
Yeah. So this is what I'm really curious about now, because obviously, essentially, this is a biopic. You can, if you want to characterize it, it's not quite there, but it is a biopic. It's all, and those always sit on that line between truth and interpretation. And so, how do you think about creative license here, especially given that Whitney herself wasn't involved in the production?
Well, so first of all, it's a privilege to tell Whitney's story, and despite the fact that there were legal constraints that prevented us from contacting her, I felt a huge responsibility to try to get it right and be as accurate and truthful and informative as I could. And so, my co-writers and I did a really deep dive on. We poured over the lawsuits over and over and over. We read through all the articles, all the interviews, read books about the culture at the time, down to like finding people's archived Vine posts to try to just really map out, because there wasn't like a book about this story. And so to really make ourselves the experts that we could be on this, on Whitney's story at this time and this subject. And then from there, it's finding what resonates with me. What's the story that I really feel is my place to tell and that I understand. And so the thing that really stuck out to me, that ended up being the through line of the film, was when I read about her speaking out against Andre in 2019. And to me, reading about her talking about feeling like sort of being part of the boys club and believing there was room for only one woman at the table, to her journey all the way to risking her company and everything to speak out against Andre, that felt to me like a film, and it felt like something that I have been sort of the issues of complicity and morality and working in sort of an imperfect system and how to navigate that. Those are all things that have been, spinning around in my mind for years. And so to get to tell that part of her story was the part that I felt, the most, the closest to and resonated the most with me.
Does that mean though you did have a sense of responsibility as a storyteller, because you really are the primary voice in the room if Whitney isn't able to be part of this? And the film acknowledges this, which I found really refreshing. It's very open about the fact that she's not part of this, and this is really your interpretation. What kind of responsibility does that hold, especially given that this is really your authorship?
Yeah. I think that there's so many women's stories who have not been told because of NDAs or because of fear of retribution or just, trying to protect their reputation. And so, for me, it was like an honor to get to tell this story that maybe could not have been told by her, and felt like it had, a way to get this story out, because I think there's elements of it that resonate really deeply with people. And from everything I've watched and read, Whitney is using her story in any way she can to be really vulnerable and try to support women. And so, I it's like an honor to be part of that.
I want to do a couple of sidebars on the cast, because I was going to tell you, like, I went into this knowing nothing apart from I knew what Bumble was, I knew what Tinder was, that's it. And so I'm watching this and I'm like, Jackson White, he's really, really interesting, because it's like his performance invites you in before he completely turns. What were the conversations around calibrating that dynamic so the shift feels quite shocking and inevitable at the same time?
Jackson's such an incredible performer. And what I loved about working with him is that he has a rawness and a realness and sort of an unpredictability and like a just a spark
Yeah.
to him that makes it feel, that makes the character feel real, and makes, the last thing I wanted was like just cut and dry villain, mustache twirling villains. And so the way that Jackson sort of presents his emotions right on the foreground, and there's sort of a vulnerability and kind of this bravado, and it's all wrapped into one, and you don't know what side you're going to get. It let it feel not like someone who's premeditating that they're going to do these terrible things, but someone who just ends up behaving in a way that obviously is pretty horrible, but but feels earned and feels true to this character, and doesn't feel like like we're doing a purposeful bait and switch with the filmmaking.
Yeah. Yes, honestly, if you looked at my notes from this film, they're quite hilarious because the first half of my notes are like, this is lovely, what a lovely romance. And then of course, I start getting more and more irate by the end of it. Um,
Wait a second, this isn't a
Similarly,
lovely romance at
hang on a
all.
second, this guy's an asshole. Wow. Um, Similarly, though, what I really liked is Mahala's, I can never say her name properly, Mahala's character is such an important grounding presence because there's no real rivalry there. I was expecting her to be like the op, and she's not at all. Was that a conscious corrective to how women are often positioned in stories like this?
I mean, so first of all, just again, if there's one thing I will really brag about with this film, the casting, I feel like to a person, I'm just so in love with every performer, and they brought so much. And Myha'la was no exception. You know, she really brought that character to life and is like just a joy to work with and watch perform. Um, and yeah, I mean, it basically, in trying to tell a true story, you end up needing a little help to make it all work in a film. And so this character that's sort of like inspired by some people, but then really is a fictionalized character that let us tell a lot of the parts of the story that were inherent to the real life, but not neatly laid out in sort of a three-act structure.
Yeah. So, okay, when the story reaches the point where she's being humiliated, she's being edged out, you can feel the film asking a bigger question about accountability and what it costs to call out toxic behavior. So, what did you want most audiences to carry out of those scenes beyond the righteous anger that I certainly felt?
The thing that inspired me so much about that real life moment was Whitney, you know, speaking out against this behavior at great risk to herself. And so I feel like there's a lot of things that are very dark in our world. We haven't solved all the problems. Uh, and so I would love, we all need to be asking ourselves, how can I help? What can I put on the line? What am I comfortable, not just speaking out when it's convenient or when everyone else is doing it, but like your time, your finances, your reputation, your body in the form of protest. Like, what are you willing to risk to make the world a better place? And like, it sounds a little reductive, but I think that's the question that the movie is asking. And we're watching Whitney's journey in real time from going along to get along and being working within that system and succeeding within that system, and then through making Bumble, and then through the at the end with Andre, really bucking that system and deciding to take a bigger stand.
And what is more perfect at the moment in this world we're living in than that kind of mindset? Honestly, it's such a relevant theme that we're all kind of grappling with. Rachel, it's such a great conversation. So much to unpack with this film. It's clear how much thought went into shaping both the energy and the perspective. Really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much. You always have such great questions.